to another edition of the Thriving Christian Artist podcast. So glad that you are with me today. I've got a brand new friend, fellow author, and just so excited to get into his story today, Michael Duty. Michael, welcome, man, to the podcast. Glad you're here.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Every now and then I get interesting emails across my desk from publishers and that sort of thing that say you got to check out this new project and consider having this guy on the podcast. And that was one of the emails that I got about you, Michael, and just excited to tell your story. You've got a brand new book out that we'll be getting into called Canaan Found, which is I've got it right next to my bed. I'm getting started on it and excited. I'm always looking for a new great book to read, but for those folks that are just kind of getting to know you, why don't you give us the quick thumbnail of who you are, where you are in the world, and then we'll kind of jump into a little bit of your backstory.
Well, I'm currently retired. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. Moved down here about 6 years ago. I had a pretty long career as an architect, had my own firm and with multiple stake practice and did projects all over the nation. And we came down to South Carolina like I say, about 6 years ago. We decided we relocated here from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I had my firm. And I came out here and practiced a little longer with some local as a director of architecture, local firm. And then I finally retired about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, I've realized, as most people do, who when they retire, all the time that they have to spend doing other pursuits. And some of my other pursuits, I had many.
Yeah.
One of which was writing. And I started writing back when I was still working as an architect. And released a book back in, I guess it was 2016 or 17, my first book, and it was called Egg Crate Beginnings.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a story of my life, such as it was, which was a little bit of journaling, a little bit of humor, and a little bit of history, and a little bit of observation on the Lord's role in our life.
Yeah.
And then I followed it up and entered the world of fiction with my latest work, Canaan Found. And I've always been a storyteller. And so I took my experiences in different states and different places and applied them to creating a fictional story, but the one that's based in ultimate truth, I think God's truth and human truth, and explores human nature, and had a good time doing it. And it's been awesome. Well received.
That's so great. I'm thinking, when you talked about going from working life to retired life and the rhythm of that, my in-laws, who we actually moved to Texas, I was telling you earlier, we lived in Asheville for 13 years, very close to where you are now. And we moved out here to East Texas to be closer to my in-laws. And when my in-laws retired, this has been, maybe 15 years ago. I remember my mother-in-law saying to my father-in-law, "Listen, I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch every day." She said, "I'm not cooking 3 meals a day for you." And there was some rhythm. He took up wood turning, to kind of get some energy and get out of the house a little bit and that sort of thing. But there is a completely different rhythm to life in it when you're not going into an office and that sort of thing. I mean, was that difficult for you, or was that a welcome transition for you? Or
it wasn't difficult at all. I mean, there are a lot of adjustments between myself, between anybody and their wife, but between myself and my wife. It wasn't a big adjustment, actually, because we've always done pretty much everything together. So when I wasn't at work, no matter what we were doing, we were together, whether it was work, play, house, home improvement, or vacations. We pretty much did everything together. So it wasn't a big adjustment, but I was able to certainly enjoy the time that the additional time, I guess, 9 hours a day that now I had to redevote. And I've always been a painter, oil painting.
Wow.
And so I increased my time in that to a large extent, although I also decided it was time to put some of my musical interest to work, and I began studying the violin. So I take violin lessons, and I live on a golf course but I don't really care that much about golf, except I like to play with my grandson. He
Yeah.
likes to play, so we play once every couple of weeks. But other than that, it's violin, writing, painting, and working and doing things with my wife.
Yeah.
And it's been a great transition, and we're enjoying the time immensely. And I do not really miss the practice of architecture. Nothing against it. I loved it, but it was kind of like, okay, did that. Now I'm going to do this.
Yeah. The season's over. I mean, you can kind of feel that. So that's,
Yeah.
I know you know this, Michael, but I think a lot of people can struggle with this when they move from working, quote unquote, working life to more of a retired life or even an entrepreneurial life, which you're doing, both of those. There's a level of intentionality, I think, that we all have to bring to life when we're no longer working for someone or working in a real structured atmosphere. We're the ones that have to bring the structure to our creative practice. And it seems to me like, you're someone that obviously had your own business for a lot of years, but, had staff and lots of projects going on and that sort of thing. So there's maybe a regimen to life. How have you begun to bring that into your creative practice now so that you're not waking up with that sort of blank canvas overwhelm? I could do anything. I won't do anything, because I can do anything. So what are you doing to kind of help bring rhythm to a life that's completely open now and up to you?
Well, first off, historically, for the longest time, I guess 30 years, as the owner and uh, president of a firm, I was always, my day and my time was always up to me. Of course, it was heavily influenced by the needs of my clients, but I was always organizing my own time, and not really necessarily jumping through hoops by others. And so I was comfortable with that. Um, Now, after being retired, the one thing that we all are given an equal portion of is time, and we each of us decide how to spend that time. So it's a valuable resource, and we shouldn't take it lightly. So as a retired person, I find that, I found that my sense on how to organize my day was still intact, and I went about my things in a rather uh, steady manner. I got up early and spent my day doing other things. It's kind of funny. I think tomorrow, and I think ahead, and I always plan my day. And I tell my wife when I get up, well, here's what I'm going to do today, and I kind of outline all the different things that I'm going to do today. And about 2/3 of the time, she reorganizes that for me a little, or adds to it, and
Right,
sometimes improves it, sometimes encourages it, and sometimes derails it. But
right.
it's all fun, and so it's kind of you can plan all you want, but you got to be willing to enjoy the discovery. And
Yeah.
so I kind of discover each day with a rough idea of what's to come.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's always room for the little emergencies and little,
Yeah,
explanations.
that's what it's all about.
That's right. That's right. I love
I
that.
can start the day, and my grandkid will call and say, I want to go fishing. And so I say, okay, we're going
Let's do
fishing. Uh,
it. I love that.
but in the absence of any other input, I pursue all the things that I'm working on with a pretty regular basis. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah. God's word talks about, doing everything we do as unto the Lord. And talk about, having your own architecture firm, and then now as a writer, how is doing that unto the Lord and involving his calling on your life and purpose for your life, how has that differed, going from the working world to now into this different season of life, and what does it look like for you to walk with the Holy Spirit every day and involve him in the things that you're doing creatively and vocationally?
Yeah. Well, obviously, he's the presence of the Lord in my life has been with me frankly, since the first grade, in one form or another. And but I began writing, I think, when I was still working as an architect. And I might back up and say I've always been a bit of a storyteller. I like to do a lot of wilderness camping and backpacking, and I've done some guiding and horse trips into the wilderness and taking people. And so I've always been an outdoors person, and I found a lot of solace there and a lot of joy there. And the same thing's true for my wife. She joined me on all those trips.
Mm.
But when I was working still, I actually began writing, 10 or 15 years ago, and I started two or three things, books, if you will, outlines of ideas. But it was about in 2015 or so when I was still working. I I started by writing my life story. I was actually praying one time, and I think during the prayer I asked the question, what can I do to serve you?
Yeah.
And it was funny. It was like, how it happens. I mean, it was like I heard him say, or at least I heard the words, "Write your story, stupid." And and I thought, my story. And I thought, okay. And so I was familiar with journaling, and I was familiar with that. And I had even tried in the past to write down a little my story, but I didn't have a big enough ego to think why would I be writing my story? And after that prayer, I started writing the story, and I did it from the standpoint of revealing along the way how God had played a role in my life. And it wasn't vast. It's not a theological work. I didn't quote the Bible. I didn't pound anybody with a requirement. I just said, here's what happened to me. And I had a great deal of fun writing it. And I found it very easy to get published. And then, but it was still my story, and I was limited, if you will, to that. And I had a lot more to say.
Mm.
So my second book I chose fiction, but again, I wanted to illuminate how the presence of God affects us in our life. And I didn't want to do it in a heavy-handed way, but I wanted to do it in a manner that people could relate to and see in themselves and in others. So I wrote Canaan Found, and it's about a cowboy. I did a lot of cowboying when I was in New Mexico. I'm not a cowboy, because in my world, a cowboy is someone that earns their living on horseback. I never really earned my living, but I did my share of 25 years actually of horsepacking and cattle working and recreational riding, and met so many people that were important to me, and so they all played a role in developing my character in the book. And I guess developing my character in reality as well as in the book.
Yeah.
The book's not about me; it's fictional characters, but it's about a cowboy that inherits a farm back in the Ozarks, which is where he was born, and he moves back, and he finds that this inheritance is a wonderful thing, but he also finds that it has responsibilities, and he reacquaints some old friends and spends time with one of his best friends, and he rekindles an old love, and he kind of develops a new attitude about church in his life, which he'd always enjoyed the presence of God, but he never was particularly a churchgoer. And so he came to terms with his attitudes about that, had a mystery to solve, which involved a murder that went back to the 40s. And
wow, I love it.
It's and he rekindled an old love from long ago because he had never married. So it's kind of a 4 stories, maybe all intertwined, moving towards the conclusion. And it's about human nature, and it's full of humor. And those who've read it have said it was extremely funny and very illuminating, and wanted to know when the next one's coming out. So
no pressure, right? Be fabulous again, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was when the first person said to me, even before it was fully released, they read it and they said, "When are you going to do the sequel?" And I thought, gosh, I never thought about a sequel. You're way ahead of me. I said, let's just take this one day at a time.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. But it's been great fun, and that's how I've chosen. I think, at least through writing, that's how I've chosen to share my view of the Lord,
Yeah.
and the same time use that as a vehicle to tell funny stories and to play with human nature.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you're talking about using fiction and using story. Obviously, Jesus did that in such beautiful ways to draw us into these stories that catch us off guard and speak
Yeah,
truth. And I think, wasn't it C.S. Lewis that talked about we don't need more Christian writers, or we need more Christians who are writing great literature. And I'm wondering how you have a lot of Christians who want to say something and want to communicate something feel the pressure many times of having to front load it with Christian metaphor and Bible verses and all the stuff, and yet fiction is such a beautiful back door, if you will, to people's heart, to be able to get them to talk about and realize issues of faith and life and purpose that maybe they wouldn't otherwise do. So what was that like for you? Was that a wrestling moment for you, or was that always a natural thing and for you in that process?
well, I think it was really natural. I think that while the story is a book of fiction, of course, first and foremost, I drew on the places that I knew, New
Yeah,
Mexico
yeah,
and the Ozarks. These are places that I knew. It wasn't so much that the story was about me, but it was set in places that I knew and understood. I wanted it to have realism and grounded in something that readers could relate to.
yeah.
And so it was a very easy thing to do. And the fiction, I like what you just said about what C.S. Lewis said. I had never heard that quote, but yeah, I'm not a reader of quotation marks Christian books. I mean, I
Right.
do read one or two, or well, I probably read 5 or 6 a year. Sometimes they become repetitive. Sometimes they're very instructive. Frequently, they're illuminating,
Mhm.
and they're thought provoking. But the engagement through that medium is not the same as the engagement through fiction.
Mm.
If I can illustrate what I consider to be truths of the human spirit and truths of relative to how God works in our life through stories of people, I think it brings it home. And sometimes it sneaks up on you because you'll be reading about characters and what they're doing, and then it's even without quoting any Bible or any references to the Bible or anything that's remotely theological, all of a sudden something emerges. Yeah, that was the right thing to
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
Or conversely, wow, that was the wrong thing to do. And so it puts the reader in a position of, I think, just experiencing the Lord along with the characters, and that's why it's for me, it's a happy medium.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Well, man, you've done a great job. It is a beautiful book. Just for those of you on YouTube, you can see it. It's a large volume. It's beautiful. It feels good. It's one of those kind of ones that you want to grab and read. And I know folks are going to want to grab it. So, where's the best place people can go to get the book and to start reading it for themselves?
Well, it's available on my website, which is michaeldutybooks.com.
Right.
And that comes directly from the publisher. And that's a very easy way to do it, michaeldutybooks.com. It's also available on Amazon. I guess everything's available on
Yeah.
Amazon, whether you want it to be or not, but it's fine with me. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available in Kindle form on uh, what do they call it, e-version
Yeah. Yeah.
on Amazon, and that's the places to get the book. It's available. It's starting to show up in some bookstores.
Nice.
I've got it in a couple of bookstores, and I'm going to travel, in fact, to Rogers, Arkansas, on June the 3rd to have a book signing at a bookstore there, because that's the town that the book is set in.
Oh, exciting. Exciting.
Yeah, and there's been some. Well, it's been very popular in that area, mostly because of the setting, partially because some of the people knew me,
Yeah.
and although not very many, mostly it was the setting and the story itself, and so it's been very, and I'm so it's been very, very well received there, and Some of the churches are getting involved in getting the book, and so it's
Nice.
been rewarding. And I thought the best thing I can do is go have a book signing and meet the people.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, I love what you're doing. I love your heart behind it. And I especially love that in this season of life where so many people are slowing down, you're pressing the gas and you're going for it and doing everything that God's put on your heart to do and living a beautiful life. So, Michael, thank you so much for taking time today. And guys, be sure to grab the book. You can go to the link that's in the description, either on the podcast or on YouTube, and connect with Michael, grab the book, and you'll love it. And tell your friends about it. And Michael, thanks again for being on, and can't wait for that sequel. No pressure, but when you get that one done, we'll have you back and talk about that one as well. So
That sounds great. I really enjoyed it.